Hello. Just want to make sure that everybody can hear me.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Tamam Gökhan.
Yani başta şeyden bahsedelim mi? Konflikt yok.
Welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to invite everyone and thank them for coming to our quarterly conference call for LifeCircle. And I'm really excited to introduce our guest speakers today. I want to introduce Gokhan Olgun. I was born in Turkey and graduated from Hacettepe University in 2008 with his medical degree. He completed his pediatric residency at the University of Chicago, or University of Illinois at Chicago, sorry, and pediatric critical medicine fellowship at the University of Chicago. Gokhan has been working for Stanford Health since 2015 in the pediatric intensive care unit here at Stanford Children's Hospital, or our Castle. His research interests are early identification of sepsis and neurocritical care, including brain death determination. Gokhan likes hiking, biking, gardening, and reading. He is married to Gulsah, and they have 3 children. And Gulsah Olgun was born and raised in Turkey and graduated from Hacettepe University School of Medicine in 2009. She worked as a research assistant at Northwestern University, Division of Pediatric Kidney Diseases for 1 year prior to her residency at the University of Chicago in Illinois in pediatrics. Gulsah has been working as a general pediatrician for 5 years and has specific interests in immunizations and childhood obesity. She enjoys having quality time with her husband and 3 children, traveling, meeting new people, and cooking. Her clinic is located at Sanford Children's Clinic MB2 in Sioux Falls. And so I want to turn it over to both of you and thank you again for helping. And I hope I pronounced both your names and your university correctly.
Thank you very much. I think you did a really good job there. So I'm going to start with my presentation here. I just want to make sure everyone is mute.
You're welcome.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to start with, okay, hold on, let me mute myself here. Okay, so I'm going to start with talking about some simple facts in Islam. And I'm going to talk about the end-of-life rituals and philosophy of illness. Then I'm going to give over Gokhan, and he's going to talk about more of the palliative care, what it can offer to Muslim patients at the end of life. So first of all, thank you for inviting us today to talk about Islam. We know cultural competency is becoming increasingly important, and it's directly associated with improved health outcomes, patient satisfaction, and quality of care. So, and becoming more culturally competent is, of course, knowing more about different cultures and religions. So I really appreciate having me here today. So let's start this presentation here. So what is Islam? It's a Abrahamic monotheistic religion. The word Islam itself means, it originates as the same root of an Arabic word salam, which means peace. It's the world's largest, second largest religion with over 1.8 billion followers, or 24% of the world's population as of 2017. So if you think what is the variety of these different cultures when you're encountered with a Muslim patient, it becomes really important because there are some core simple tenets of the religion, but then some cultural practices may change around it, and it may not necessarily be in concordance with the basic religious practices. So it's really important not to make assumptions when interacting with a Muslim patient. The holy book of Islam is Quran, which the Quran today is it appears unchanged since the original scripts that are carbon dating back to 7th century. So it's only one copy. Prophets, there are Muslims believe in other prophets as well. Actually in Quran, there are more than 25 prophets that are mentioned, and Jesus is the most mentioned prophet, in fact. There are holidays, which are every Friday. It's the holiest day of the week, and Muslims gather to do noon prayer every Friday. There's Eid al-Adha. It's the celebration of the sacrifice of Abraham. Eid al-Fitr, celebration of the fast breaking, and Ramadan, which is the 1 month long holy month that Muslim people will do fasting. So those last, Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr and Ramadan, is based on moon calendar, and it is, oh, I don't know why it's not sharing here. Let's see if I can resume, excuse me, I'm gonna resume my sharing here so you can see slides. All right, here we go. I think it's better now. So the Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr will be based on moon calendar. So it goes around the year. So sometimes Muslim people will fast during summer, sometimes during winter. There is a special diet, halal, or zabiha, you may have heard, which is alcohol, non-halal animals, especially pork, and any animals that have not been slaughtered according to Islamic custom are prohibited. So basically any pork derived products, medications will be prohibited, except there will be exceptions in that, and we'll talk about that. So let's move here. There are 5 pillars of Islam, which are the 5 core acts that are considered mandatory for all practicing Muslims. The first one is called Shahadah. Basically, it's an Arabic sentence that every Muslim has to say aloud and declare. Basically, it's a declaration of their faith. And the meaning is there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So this is, then they're considered Muslim. And this is also important at the end of life. Muslim people believe that they need to say this immediately before their last breath. So right before death, as long as they're conscious. Salat is the second one, which is the prayer that Muslims will do 5 times a day. You have to do certain movements in certain order physically. So if you're healthy, you do it as is. If you're sick, then you can do that with modifications. But as long as you're conscious, you need to do this prayer 5 times a day. If you have bad knees, you can be sitting like this old man in the picture. Or if you're sick, you can pray in your bed. Or if you can't move at all, then you can even just pray with your eyes, eye movements, and then just envision that you're praying. There is the third one, Psalm is the Arabic name, fasting during Ramadan. So basically during Ramadan, eating, drinking, cigarette smoking, alcohol, sex, any medication, and of course ice cream in the picture, are prohibited during daytime. And it's for 30 days. So you have to be healthy to do this. You have to be old enough and healthy. Anyone, any children, pregnant women, breastfeeding moms, or if you're sick, if you need to take medication more than once a day, or if you're needing any injections like insulin or some other medications, then you're not supposed to be fasting. The fourth one is the Hajj, which is the pilgrimage. Muslims go to Mecca in Saudi Arabia once a year. You have to be healthy for this. You have to be able to financially afford this. It's one of the largest gatherings all around the world that are done annually. Anywhere from 1 to 3 million people will perform this, except of course this year. Only, I think Saudi Arabia has decided that they're only allowing their citizens younger than 65 years of age. So they're gonna be, you're not gonna see this crowd in the pictures this year. Zakat is the fifth one, which is the charity. So basically you have to be financially meeting certain criteria to do this. And there's nothing that, to do with your health. So let's talk about the philosophy of illness. For Muslims, they believe that they will gain grace and mercy through illness and hope that their sins will be forgiven if they show patience. So it's not like, hey, I did something bad and this happened to me, but the opposite. Hey, I'm going through a test that God has set for me, and I need to be patient to pass this and gain his forgiveness. And there are, I listed some hadith here. Those are the prophetic teachings that in the same line with this. The last two, and I want to focus on one of them here. A Bedouin asked the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, should we not treat sickness? And he replied, treat sickness, for God has not created any disease except that he has also created its cure, except for one disease. So those around the Prophet asked, oh messenger of God, what is it? And he said aging. So there is also an encouragement for Muslims to seek treatment actively to avoid those morbidity or mortality associated with their illness. And there's another hadith that says, if any saves a life, it is as if he saved the lives of all mankind. So it's definitely encouraged there. So when you're interacting with a Muslim patient, caring for them, what are some of the things that you need to take into consideration? Gender concordant care is preferred. If there's a woman Muslim patient, might prefer a woman physician or healthcare provider in their care, but most of them will be okay with any provider that is available, especially in the emergent settings. And if not, they might request chaperone, or chaperone might be offered if there's going to be an opponent gender caring for that patient. Halal diet is something might need to be taken into consideration. Some medications will be pork protein derived or gelatin, pork derived gelatin capsules. So some patients might be more sensitive. Some will think that it's the protein structure is changed and now it's not considered pork, so they will be okay with that, but always check in with a patient might be a good idea there. Accommodations for praying might be important for those practicing Muslims. They might need a place that for those prayers 5 times a day. There is a certain practice called ablution, wudu, so that you need to wash some body parts in certain order to perform prayer. And so some patients may not be able to do that on their own, or they may need modification on that. There's even ablution kits, like dry ablution kits, basically a box of sand or a piece of rock. And in fact, I saw in one of the articles in the literature talked about this. There was one patient had a rock in her bed, and there was a language barrier where nurse couldn't really understand why she was keeping it and wasn't letting it go. And they checked with the Islamic chaplain and found out that she was using that to do this dry ablution before her prayers, because she wasn't able to go to the bathroom 5 times a day and perform that ablution necessarily. So that was, it becomes some religious practices might become more important even for non-practicing patients at the end of their lives. So might be something to take into consideration there. And respecting modesty and privacy is important, because they're, especially for Muslim women, maybe asking permission before entering the room, or covering the patient if except during the physical examination or procedures if it's not needed. So some of the end-of-life rituals for Muslims, we talked about the dry ablution kits, some might prefer to do that. Saying Shahadah, that declaration of faith, that Arabic sentence, immediately before that. So family members might be at the bedside and kind of talking patient into that, or the imam if there's someone at the bedside. Praying or reciting Quran is important, might be important for some patients. After death, the eyes of the deceased should be closed and the body should be covered, and loud lamentation is prohibited. Burial is required fairly soon, within 24 hours to 72 hours, just like Judaism. Embalming and cremation is not allowed, and autopsy is allowed if medically or legally required. Another couple of things, one is the suicide and the other is the euthanasia are not allowed. There's a verse in Quran, it says, "And do not kill yourselves or one another. Indeed, God is to you ever merciful." So this is, I think, where palliative care really becomes important for those Muslims at the end of their life. So I'm gonna hand over to Gokhan, and he will talk more about the palliative care for Muslim patients.
Well, I'm just trying to share my screen. Just hold on with me for a second. Yeah, currently I'm having some issues with my presentation, but I'll have if you would download it for me so you can just share those in your own computer so that I can start. And let me start by saying that thank you for allowing us to give you this presentation, and so it's we've been really honored, and we do not have a slide, but we do not have any disclosures to make. Except that we are both Muslims. I don't know if that counts, but it's just like, and so we thought, me and my wife, we had, we had no formal training in Islam. It's been a way of our culture. So we gave a thought about just, we're not the experts by any means about the Islamic theology. I'll give you some references at the end of my presentation that I have used while I was getting ready for this presentation. And there are also some organizations that I found online, which I'll provide you the link. And the Islamic Muslim Association of Northern America is one of those that I found. Some also, they have some policies about palliative care. Yes, now I can see palliative care in Islam. So now Dr. Gulsah, she mentioned about the general perspective of the perspectives in Islam, and we just wanted to increase your familiarity with the Islam itself before we talk about the end of life care, because also there's there's a lot of misconceptions and there's a lot of information out there. So we just wanted to share the general concepts. And what I will be doing is I'll be talking about the end of life care from the Islamic perspective. As you have heard, I'm a pediatric intensivist, and here in South Dakota, it's not, maybe it should be, it's not a part of my practice to ask about my patients' religious practices. There's some Muslims or other religions, but it just doesn't strike me. And in the pediatrics, although that compared to adults, the mortality rate in the pediatric ICU is actually pretty low. It's about 1 to 2% in all pediatric ICUs compared to adult ICUs, where the mortality is much higher. And then you just happen to make those decisions, or like happen to see the patients with different religious beliefs or Islam in specific. So I'll start with the approach to illness. And I would like to say that illness, it's not considered as a punishment from the God, and it's just like it's just like the way of the law. You can get you in your lifetime, you can have different experiences in anything, and the illness is one of those. And Muslims usually see the suffering as a way to gain grace and mercy for the God. It's just a way of atonement. There's this concept of atonement also in Islam too, so that the illness is going to, and the illness is going to wash away your sins. And also, I just, when the believer receives any good, he's thankful to Allah and gets a reward. And when some misfortune befalls on him, he endures it patiently, so for which he is also rewarded. So I just take this as this was one of the actually sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, which also in Islam, like there's like the source of information that we currently have is either the book of Allah, which is Quran, which is revealed to his messenger Prophet Muhammad, and also like there's his sayings and his deeds and his traditions also is followed by Muslims. So those two are the big sources of information in Islam. I mentioned about the concept of the atonement in suffering. So as Gulsah has mentioned, Muslims are highly encouraged to seek for treatment and medical help, but it's not, they shouldn't be so that they should be seeking for the treatment for any diseases, but while they do the suffering of the suffering, some of them may see as an atonement. And then I'll talk about the concept of death a little bit. And in Islam also there is the resurrection. So all the humans who lived will be resurrected in the day of judgment, and the God, the Lord, who is the judge, who will judge us according to our deeds, and then the ones with the good deeds will go to the heaven, and the ones with the bad deeds will go to the hell according to the Islamic theology. And I put two of those ayats, which are taken from the Quran, and also I've seen it's the same philosophy, like from ash to ash, from dust to dust. So the humans and the God created us according to Islam from dust, and we will become dust at the end of our journey, and we will be resurrected. So in the verse it says, "Do not these think that they shall be raised again for a mighty day, the day on which man shall stand before the Lord of the worlds. And says the man, what, when I am dead, shall truly be brought forth alive? Does not man remember that we created him before, when he was nothing?" And then I will talk about the role of the end of life care and suicide. And the human life is considered sacred, and so we are not allowed. So it's just kind of like the God, the Lord, is the owner of our bodies and our souls, and we borrow those. So it's like, so we cannot take our lives, and so that the suicide is prohibited, as well as euthanasia. So I think that's the value there comes into play, the value of the palliative care, because they need the palliative care and also to relieve of someone's suffering, as well as the psychological needs, and also as well as someone's pain. To relieve someone's pain is strongly encouraged. And here I just wanted to tell you, there's always also, you may hear in some people or some countries, there may be a controversy about opiates, and the norm, because when a Muslim dies, they would like to go to the God with a clear mind and clear thinking, and they think that if the opiates may cloud their judgments at the time of the death, and some of them will shy away from opiates, so that there has to be a conversation made between the providers about what kind of pain medication they would prefer, and also you would say that it shouldn't be interfering with your judgment, but at the doses that are provided, usually the opiates are mainly for the pain purposes, so that and the patients should usually should be okay. The communication is the key here, I would like to say. And because in Islam there is no preordained clergy, so there is no one, and specifically kept between the God as intermediaries between the God and the person. So you're directly connected to the God, and you are directly responsible to the God, but nobody else. And so because of this, since there is no institution in general that's been accepted by the all Muslims, there are a lot of different Islamic thoughts. And so there are I think 1.4 billion Muslims in the world now. And there is a very high amount of different beliefs amongst them. Some of them are very radical, unfortunately, and some of them would be like have very liberal tendencies. And so it's as I said, because it depends on your own beliefs or whatever, what you follow, also what culture you're coming from. Because when we talk about Islam, also there's a lot of mix with the culture. Different countries have different cultures. It's all mixed together, and it's just so that's why you need to communicate to them what's there. And some cultures are very male dominant cultures, and also very paternalistic. They kind of paternalistic cultures where the liberties, the personal liberties may be lacking, and some of them may be different. So I think that's why the communication with everyone is very important, has paramount importance, so that you can understand what's their understanding of the religion and the Islam. And also I put it out, there could be some reluctance on some medications, because for example, I'll give you some examples. For example, heparins are commercially made. Most of the heparins also are made from the small intestines of the pork. Also, there are some bovine heparins, but it's very rare. So most of them are made from pork. And the Islamic scholars say, and also I'd like to point again that here you would see that there's a lot of variability in the thoughts, but the main Islamic scholars think that if they justify this, that if, according to one of the sayings of the Prophet, when there is when there is the two evils and you need to choose the lesser of the two evils, one of them is of course being sick and not being treated, and the other one is having a heparin injection. And they say, so that's why you should choose the heparin injections, and so that choose the better of those two evils. And as well as there are some people saying that when you actually it's heparin, now we already changed the molecular structure of something, so at that level it's not pork anymore. So it's just a different, you're just like you're talking about the main materials something is made of. So it's according to the Islamic theology, so those are considered clean. And also you would see that there's some controversy about the vaccines. And where we are from, we are both from Turkey. The vaccines are Turkey has a very good vaccination schedule, and I would say, and it's mandatory, and almost all of the population has been vaccinated. But as I said, some of the vaccines, the people who are against vaccines think that some of it is cultural, because there's a lot of misconceptions about, I'm sure you know about all this, and the autism and the vaccines things, which is not true, but some people still believe in this. Islamic world, plus also some of the vaccines are made with poor proteins, and they would like to avoid this. The same thing applies, the same rule applies as the heparin to the vaccines. So the vast majority of Islamic scholars and countries are okay with vaccines, but you may encounter with some individuals who would say that they do not want any vaccines because there's poor proteins in it. Okay, I'll just see, go use the. Okay, so here's another thing, the mechanical life support in the terminally ill patients and those in the persistent vegetative state. So, in general, every soul will taste death. In the end, to us shall you be brought back. This is a verse that I got from Quran, and it's he who gives life and takes it away, and him shall you be brought back. So according to those verses in the Quran, and according to the Islamic belief, the death should not be something that's you should be scared of, and it's going back to your maker, to your God, and when death becomes inevitable, the patient should be allowed to die without unnecessary procedures. And as I looked at the internet, I did some, it's almost uniform. There's this uniform acceptance that when the things are futile, you should not continue the care. And when the patient is on an artificial life support, and when the physicians believe you are prolonging someone's suffering, so that actually it's okay to stop and to stop the artificial mechanical support in those patients. And this continuation of the IV fluids and nutrition is controversial, which the main proportion of the scholar says you should, and you should discount, because at the end of life, and the IV fluids actually they are not. The question, or I would say the big question, is about enteral nutrition, because you shouldn't be starving someone to death. But if you think that it's futile, and also, for example, the IV nutrition itself is considered a treatment, not a nutrition, but treatment for most of them. And the IV nutrition actually at the end stages can be harmful to the patient, which we all know that the fluid overload plus the risk of the infection and the TPN cholestasis in pediatrics, so that actually and the IV hydration could be discontinued, and also the enteral nutrition, you shouldn't, at the end of the life, most people say you shouldn't insert like a G tube or like a nasogastric tube if you think it's futile, those considered procedures itself. But if the patients already have, the question, if someone already has an NG tube and you're feeding them, and then if you stop it, and the patient may starve to death. So this is the place where there is the controversy at, and this is something that I think you just need to discuss with the family and with your physician, your patient's loved ones specifically. And I saw that that's why they encourage for the patients to living will, so that they can write down or talk about before something critical or something bad happens, so that they're incapacitated, so that you can have this conversation or something written before. And we'll go to the brain death. I did not want this to be a big part of my presentation, because the brain death itself, I think it could be a different presentation itself. But of course, I think I kind of feel obligated to talk about it. And the brain death actually has been acknowledged as representing true death by many Muslim scholars and medical organizations, including the Islamic Fiqh Academies of the Organization of the Islamic Conference and the Muslim World League, Islamic Medical Association of North America, which I would like to say that I found their website really helpful in the resources. They had a lot of resources, and also the other faith-based medical organizations, as well as the legal rulings by multiple Islamic nations. They have the brain death and the organ donation after the brain death. However, the consensus is in the Muslim world is not unanimous, which is not surprising. I think it's the Muslim world, there is no consensus over anything anyways. So, and a sizable minority accepts that the death by the cardiopulmonary criteria only. Then here, I'm sorry, that's a busy slide, but I just found in one of the articles that I saw that shows the approach of the multiple countries to the brain death and the declaration of the brain death, and also the criteria that are used, which is, like the brain death criteria, which as a physician, I like, it's one of my main clinical interests. The brain death criteria is not uniform in any, there is no universal brain death criteria. For example, in Britain, they only consider the brainstem death as a brain death, but in other countries like US, there should be like there's this whole brain concept, which includes the whole brain and the brainstem. So different countries use brainstem versus the whole brain. But I would like to say that according to the multiple countries, Islamic countries, actually, the brain death, they endorse brain death, and they have their own different criteria. Usually in US, you need two for every state also has their different, also American Academy of Neurology has their guidelines and recommendations, but it differs in a lot of states. Usually, I think in the state of South Dakota, in pediatrics, we use American Academy of Neurology criteria. So we use two determination by two different providers. I think they use it the same for the adults too. In a lot of countries, Islamic countries, I found three. They require three people. I don't know why the three comes from. Three is usually like in Islamic theology, like 1, 3, 7. Those numbers are widely utilized. The three is but is a commonly used number. But you need, according to them, at least you need not necessarily documented, but at least 3 physicians should agree that this patient's the brain and brainstem and the brain death has occurred. Can go to the next slide. Okay, and then this is the Muslim World League, the IFA, and the OIC statement that I saw. A person is considered legally dead, and all the principles of the Sharia, which is the Islamic law, can be applied when one of the following signs is established. 1, the complete stoppage of the heart and the breathing, and the doctors decided it's irreversible. This is the cardiovascular death that we know of. The second is the complete stoppage of all the vital functions of the brain, and the doctors decided it's irreversible, and the brain has started to degenerate. And here, every country have their own different rules. And as I have mentioned previously, IMANA, the Islamic Muslim Association of Northern America, have their own recommendations. There's some questions about what's the brain degenerations and how do you prove this, but I won't go into the specific details of it. And under these circumstances, it's justified to disconnect the life-supporting systems, even though some organs continue to function automatically, like the heart, and under the effect of supporting devices. And then after the brain death, and then the actual organ donation is highly recommended by Islam, because the Prophet saying, if someone helps one single human, it's like you help the whole humanity itself. So that's, according to this saying, actually the donation is very highly encouraged. And this is here I provide you my references. I found that I like those 3 articles that we will be sending you. We'll be emailing you our slides. If you're interested, you can read those. And I found the yaqininstitute.org, which I didn't know before, but it has they have nice articles, so that you can also go into this. And also one last thing before I finish is to let you know that there's also the chaplaincy. There is there is increasing number of Islamic chaplaincy in U.S. where I had a friend in Omaha. Actually, he was he was accepted to the chaplaincy program there at Creighton's, not the UNM, University of Nebraska, but the other system there. Sorry, but it's a general chaplaincy program, but they accommodate Muslims as well. So he was there and he enjoyed it a lot, and I know that there's some programs specifically offered the Islamic chaplains, the Muslim chaplaincy, and they can be really helpful where there is a sizable Muslim community. And I found a website, the Association of American Muslim Chaplains. I think if you Google it, it just shows up. They have nice resources as well. And this is the end of our presentation, and we just try to spend a thin of your own time. We thought you may have some comments or questions at the end. We can try to answer. They even telling that we're not the experts, but we'll to just try our best. We'll just Google instantaneously if there are any questions. But you're more than welcome to share your comments and questions.
Thanks for
Go ahead.
All right, I was going to say thank you for the talk. I really appreciate it. This is Dan Mark. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about end-of-life circumstances when maybe the outcome is a little more ambiguous, maybe specifically about when conversations are about quality of life decisions, and then determining whether to proceed with aggressive interventions or to proceed more towards comfort care measures when it's more of a quality of life issue.
Thank you very much for the question. Actually, I have come up with articles about the quality of life, and also you would like the concept actually is very important, because also, I would like to I'll circle back to the comments that I made before, that actually you need to be first, if you think that the patient is suffering and that the quality of life is going to be very poor, and then you need to have an open conversation with the family. Actually, in one of the, I gave you the references. If I found a nice article in the Yaqeen Institute website, actually they say it's just according to the Islam, it's just like the person. It's not your physical body as well only, but it's like your personality and the overall social perspective, and also the physical. They all make the human, and the human is basically intake and output. And you consider if a good quality of life, if you're able to process the surroundings around you, and then have a output expression of yourself, not like I don't mean talking, but an output of somehow. And if you think that this patient is incapacitated and is not able to do any of those, then they say the scholars say that you can support those devices and have the conversation with the family not to continue the other measures of the patient. Like, let's say the patient needs a tracheostomy, and you can say, hey, I don't think it's in his best interest, and we can just and that's okay. And given the caveat that it's okay by the most of the scholars, and depending on what's your understanding of it. But it's overall, the concept of if you're not able to process the things, and if you're not able to make a meaning of whatever things the surroundings is around you, and I think then then it's considered not of a life, but more of a suffering. I don't know if this helps.
That does. Thank you.
This is Dave Bertelsbauer. If I were to be invited or know about a patient who died who's a Muslim, what are the funeral traditions and practices?
Okay, yeah, I'll take this one too. So like the funeral, we do not we do not do the embalmment, or the cremation is not allowed. So that usually what happens is they contact you ask them about if they go to a certain mosque or if they belong to a certain community. In Sioux Falls, there are 3 mosques, and they can give you the address or the contact information of the imam, who is the person in the who leads the prayers, just like and then they'll contact you. And as I said, normally the burial process is something that's not to be delayed in Islam, and so that you would like to bury the dead ideally within 24 hours and 24 to 48 hours. And then they'll contact you, and then you're obligated to wash the body, so that the body is washed. And usually they put on something, a white cloth called kafan. So it's a piece of cloth that covers your body, and they cover you in the kafan. And then after this, usually after, like the Muslims we pray for, or supposed to pray 5 times a day, and usually after noon or afternoon prayer is done, and they bring the body to the mosque, and then there is a prayer specifically for that person. It's a specific prayer, and which everybody is allowed to attend, actually encouraged to attend, because at the end of this prayer, they say to the people, hey, it's just like, were you happy with this person, and are you okay? Because Islam cannot tell anything about the interpersonal rights and relations. And before someone dies, you need to make sure that who owes you, or everybody else is okay, and tell their last things. And after this done, after the prayer is done, they go to there is a place. I've only been in one death in Sioux Falls, but there's a cemetery, or there's a part of a cemetery where the Muslims are buried, and they were planning. I think they're planning to buy a place for a Muslim cemetery, but currently there's a place where the Muslims are prayed in South Dakota, in the southeast part. I do not remember the name of the cemetery. And then the body is buried to the ground, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I think there was a question in the chat. Do you have any comments about trust in healthcare providers for Muslims? Is it recommended to have a support person who is Muslim be present when discussing end of life with the patient? So again, I think there may be some patients who might definitely like that idea, because believe it or not, in some countries, in some Muslim countries, the illness is something that culturally be ashamed of. They sometimes hide their terminal diagnosis or congenital birth defects or things like that. They try to kind of keep it more confidential in some countries. So there may be some families or people that they don't necessarily want another person in the room. So always checking with the patient is a good idea. And just like Gokhan mentioned, very paternalistic countries, in some communities, they take the doctor's word almost like I can't say no to this, like whatever you say, I'm okay with that. So asking, what do you think about this? Like, is that okay with you? Are you comfortable with this decision? Or do you want to check with your family, your, loved ones, your friends? And that's okay. It is okay to check with them. So to encourage them might not be a bad idea for those situations. So it's, again, like the 2 different ends and the variety there, always to checking with the patient and having that conversation is definitely going to be helpful.
Also, here I would like to say something that's kind of echo with what Pirsha said. And I've seen actually not, but I think this is more of a culture than the religion. I see in people with very different cultures. In some of them, they think that they do not tell you your diagnosis or because they think it's gonna affect your morale, and so that you will be very extremely disappointed, and the family actually hides the diagnosis from the patient. Sometimes they may prep you, yeah, don't never tell them he has cancer, because he's not going to tolerate it. It's going to be I'll give you a personal. My mom's aunt, they once called me that she had cancer. She had mesothelioma, which is actually relatively common to the part of the Turkey where we're from, because of there's been in their childhood there's a lot of asbestos exposure, and and they said that she's very sick and she's on her dead bed. And I called her before just to say, like I knew her from my childhood, to tell my last words. And before, son called me and said, hey, she doesn't know that she has cancer. And I said, are you serious? This woman received multiple doses of chemotherapy and all those, like all the treatments in the world, and she still doesn't know her diagnosis. Do you think it's fair to her? But still, they didn't want to talk about her cancer diagnosis. And I talked to her. She knew that she was going to die. You just didn't put the name of cancer in there. But it was just kind of that kind of a conversation. I think the younger generation is better. They expect you to tell them everything, and they would like to be more actively involved in a lot of decisions made. Maybe it's a generational thing, but this is something I just wanted to share.
This is Cameo. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I have a question about decision makers. If we have a patient who has lost the capacity to make their own decisions and we need an agent to step in, our state law gives us sort of I'll call it a pecking order if the patient hasn't named someone. So it would be spouse, adult children, then parents, siblings, aunts and uncles. Is there anything, according to the Muslim culture or religion, that would maybe differentiate that pecking order?
Okay. My answer to this is I do not know. I don't think, some of the challenges are not, we have our today's challenges. It wasn't there when they had Islam 1500 years ago. So people read the book and they just try to make decisions. So I would say I may be wrong, but there is no certain order that they use. But also the spouses are very important, and some of them make the decisions as a family. So a family gets together and they just kind of decide on what to do. Or as I said, it's very cultural. I'll give you another example. Like like some parts, there's smoking plus like the lung cancer was very common in one of my friends' hometown, and a lot of them, almost everybody, like it's after some age, because smoking and all those, had some cancer, and they had their family used to get around. They used to meet and decide if this person needed to get chemotherapy or not. So it was just kind of for them, it was a family meeting. But answer to the question, I would still go with the regular order, and start with the spouse and then talk with the children and go from there.
I just want to say thank you again for giving this presentation. I found it really meaningful and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much, everyone.